Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video. And yes guys, you know what the next documentary it is that I am now about to review. And, well, if it's already obvious, because yeah, with the sad passing of Drew Struzan, now is the time for me to review this documentary that's all about Drew Struzan himself, the man, the legend, legendary artist. He was the man whom was responsible for bringing life to so many iconic movie posters, you name it. And you, of course, know which ones he's done. For all of you like me who are hardcore experts on Drew Struzan's artwork and the amount of movie posters he's done, we all have our favorites. And especially, those that come from Drew, like, some of his top best ones, like, God, there's so many. And, there would be a couple of other artists that, kind of going in that same direction as he did and such, because, we've seen other movie posters that are in that same style as his, but not all of them are his, but yeah. So, that's right, guys. I am now finally reviewing, and in memory of the late, great, legendary artist himself, Drew Struzan, this is the documentary from 2013, Drew, the man behind the poster. Yes. So I had always been meaning to check out this documentary, and luckily, because having to check it out and such, and most prominently on YouTube, because yeah, you can go watch it on YouTube, it's right there. Especially, yeah, because now was the time for me to watch this, and on account that here I am now, doing my review on it, with Drew's passing, yeah, because this documentary itself, well, it of course does not disappoint. Everything this documentary has to offer from beginning to end. The more we get to know about Drew Struzan, and at the time of when this documentary came out, when he was still alive, and yeah, he was still active, although somewhere around that time, he did retire, but there were a few times he did come out of retirement for special occasions. But yeah, because what we learn about Drew Struzan, not just for his artwork, but, what he's like as a person, and being a family man and all that, and, like anybody, a great talent like him going through some struggles in life, just, man. Some things that are brought up in this documentary, some pretty interesting ones, like, he didn't really have the best childhood and all that, but sometime a little later, he managed to pull through. He found / met the love of his life, but, even both of them, they were struggling and such. But, as time moved on, things would get better. Yeah. And, boy, because, Drew, at that time, obviously had no idea what he was going to expect, and because he had that in him since day one, being a fantastic artist. And everybody whom is involved in this documentary, those whom have worked with Drew Struzan, maybe not all of them in person, but they are, of course, well aware of him, and they admire his talent, his artwork, and those that were part of these movies where Drew did those posters, those that appear from Harrison Ford, Michael J. Fox, Guillermo del Toro, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, the list goes on, and I'll talk about the rest of them as I dive in / break down the documentary. But, just to round off with the first things I have to say about this documentary, I'm glad to have finally checked this out, really enjoy it. My love, of course, for movie posters, especially those that were done by hand, artwork and such, in the case of Drew Struzan, like all of us. I'm sure, yeah, you feel the same way too. And no hard feelings on today's posters. Like, no, they're not all that bad, but just something about specifically what Drew himself did when it came to making movie posters, unlike anything else. Really, because the posters breathing life, and, it would explain on what the audience are to expect what that movie is like, and so on. This poster speaks of itself. Like, you get what I'm saying? Just, yeah, it's amazing. But yeah, just overall, Drew, the man behind the poster, it's a fantastic, well-put documentary, and recommended, of course. And for any of you who are big fans of Drew Struzan's work, you have your favorite posters that he did, and yeah, just need I go on. And by the way, because with me saying that, yeah, we all have our favorite posters, well, just to quickly mention it because, well, for me, personally, yeah, I mean, I have plenty of favorite posters that Drew has done. Golly, because it's hard to choose. And for me, it's really hard to say which is my number one favorite, okay? I sometimes find that difficult. Any of us would. But point being is that, yeah, the ones I can think of course, well, obviously, there's Star Wars, there's Indiana Jones, which this documentary goes into heavy detail about. Of course it does. Harry Potter, that as well, and also Trouble in Chinatown, you know, that one, big with Kurt Russell, that one, and The Thing, that was a biggie for Drew Struzan, and also, having done the Police Academy posters, yeah, those were pretty good, but yeah, because, again, like, the ones I can really think of that I really love is, well, again, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Hook was a good one he did, and, you know, because I'm wearing this shirt on this occasion, makes sense. Also, Hellboy. Now, that was a pretty good one, too. But, yeah, when it came to Hellboy, well, until I get there, because, yeah, it's unfortunate. But, yeah, Hellboy and a few others that I know of, but I just can't place all of them, because he's done so many. So, and again, it's really hard to choose which is your all-time favorites. And by all means, I'm sure I'll be hearing from you in the comments section on which are some of your favorite movie posters that Drew did. All right. Anyway, so now that I've talked about that and that's out of the way, now as always, yeah, with the first things I've had to say about the documentary, along with sharing which are some of my favorite posters that he did, okay, I just remembered another one, but I'll talk about later. Yeah, with all that out of the way now as always, for me, read the description / the story. In the gig poster community, creating artwork is more than just a career. This documentary looks at the life and work of poster artist Drew Struzan. And that description / the story / overview, you know, spits true facts. You know, creating artwork is more than just a career. Very true. Keep that in mind. I'm sure you guys, some of you do, but for the rest of you, keep that in mind, because it's very true. Okay. Now with reading the description / the story out of the way, let's now dive in / break down the documentary itself, shall we? Well, so obviously to start with, you know, like anybody, including Drew, the early beginnings and such, yeah, because apparently Drew himself, of course, being a part of this documentary, you know, because in his early childhood, and even before he could speak, apparently, before he could even speak, he was really good at drawing, and like, one of the first things he did drawing was, say, on toilet paper, because apparently for him and his family, that was the only piece of paper that was available. And, jeez, because for some reason, for some weird reason, even Drew, I'm sure he had no idea why specifically, that apparently his parents, they grew to hate him or something. Like, they just, for some weird reason, they thought he was crazy or whatever. Just, that's hard to believe. Like, that's not too often, even if so, like, anything like that would happen. And, yeah, obviously that was a tough time for Drew, and on account of his, you know, like, his, you know, because of what would happen, and just, yeah, he would get kicked out and all that. Even say when, in his early career and financial struggles, because, yeah, art school dedication, because Drew did attend to the Art Center College of Design for 6 years, and financially struggling to the point of something being kicked out for non-payment, and even during that and before that, he would come across whom would become his soulmate. Yep, and of course, we have his wife making an appearance in this. And, yeah, Dylan Struzan, yeah. And apparently, according to Dylan, Drew did not make the first move or anything like that. And this was at some party or something, and where a ping pong table was, and because she realized that Drew was not making a move and noticing him checking her out, and she was too, she took it upon herself to make the first move. And just from there on, they would become two lovebirds, they get married. However, when they got married, not only for Drew, but for her as well, they were struggling with making a living. But that didn't whatsoever affect their love life and such. And that's a good thing, definitely, because I think, it should make sense, right? Because, where, look, just because two partners are... Sometimes they're making a struggle, making a living. That doesn't mean it has to affect their love life or anything like that. So, yeah, in the case of Drew and Dylan, yeah, it's great to see. But, yeah. And, yeah, because eventually, their son would step in the picture, Christian Struzan, and Drew saying how much it cost to have the child and all that. But, yeah. So it was tough times for Drew and his wife to make a living, and on account of the job that she had and all that. But at some point, Drew would find himself actually making some good progress, where actually, because, and also right here, because the rest of this, because, he supported himself by selling his student paintings to other students, a testament to his deep commitment to art over imminent financial stability. And also because with the married life things I talked about, to go into more full detail, because, in his early married life, he and his wife, they faced significant poverty, and, with the documentary emphasizing the support, it emphasizes the support of his wife, and so on, so some more details to mention. But at some point, Drew would actually make some good progress when he would find himself doing some artwork for album covers. And the guy whom was responsible for helping Drew with this and getting him a job doing all that was Ernie Kivalu, if I pronounced his last name right. Again, you know me sometimes. So, so him stepping in the picture and being a creative director, and, being one of those responsible for helping Drew and with doing some poster artwork for albums, and most prominently, it would come to say Alice Cooper. Yeah, because that was a biggie for Drew. That's what slowly but surely started to get his name to be recognized and all that, his artwork. And Michael J. Fox, who appears in this documentary, especially on account of Back to the Future, yes, and I can't believe, because like I said, there's so many posters that Drew has done, hard to keep track and which are your favorites. But the Back to the Future posters, they're also my favorite, of course, and with Michael's appearance in this documentary, it's great. So Michael sharing that, I think I kind of knew about this, but not fully, that Michael, being a fan of Alice Cooper, he remembers seeing that album cover, and I'm sure you know what it is, because, the album cover for something of Alice Cooper, it was basically Alice Cooper, not in his gothic getup and with that eye makeup and such, the eyeshadow. No, because instead, it was a cleaner Alice Cooper wearing a tuxedo and posing and such. And the more details they talk about this, basically because it's like, Alice Cooper and tuxedo, welcome, just all that. And very clever. And it's unfortunate that Alice himself doesn't appear in this documentary. Maybe he just wasn't available, but I'm sure, him being well aware of what Drew did and drawing that image of him in that tuxedo, and I'm sure he got a kick out of it. That was very clever, and with what Drew did with that Alice Cooper album cover, the artwork and such. Nice. And then, because what would come next for Drew? Still doing some artwork for albums and all that. Well, at some point, he would be recognized more by a man by the name of Tony Siniger, if I also did or did not get his last name correctly said. Yeah. But basically, he's in the business of, posters and all that. And, well, basically, yeah, he would discover Drew, and he would call up Drew, asking Drew, and, if he'd consider on making a poster for a movie poster. And Drew, he wasn't really sure about that at first, but eventually, he accepted it, and he actually liked it, yeah. And that would be just the beginning of what would come for Drew next, when he got that offer from Tony to make a movie poster, and from there on, yeah. And the first movie poster that Drew ever did, and yeah, keep in mind, because Drew, he was doing some artwork and all that, like, besides album covers, when he started to do posters for movies, it began in, say, the 1970s and from there on. So, yeah. So, in 1975, his first movie poster was for 1975's The Black Bird with George Segal. Yes, that film. And if any of you have seen that. And, obviously, you've seen that poster, so you would know. But, yeah, so, when it came to that poster, and just right there and then, because that kind of poster that Drew had brought to life, just amazing. And yeah, it wouldn't take too long for Drew to do more posters. And let's go ahead and talk about Star Wars. Of course, we have to talk about Star Wars. Because well, when it would come to Star Wars, and yeah, because right here, Drew's career breakthrough came with the 1977 poster for the re-release of Star Wars, which established him as a favorite of director George Lucas. Yeah, from George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and from there on. And, well, at one point when working on one poster for Star Wars, he actually collaborated with someone else whom doing some artwork for movie posters, and that being the late Charles White III. Yes. So basically doing spray paint, for posters, and basically what he was doing, making movie posters, was the total opposite of what Drew was doing, using pencils and all of that, But, Drew being fascinated by what Charles was doing, and so, didn't take too long for Drew to hop on board with Charles to basically make a poster, each of them making a poster together. Drew would do the human characters, while Charles would do the robots, in this case, the droids, C-3PO and R2-D2, and the human characters, well, obviously, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Darth Vader, well, I mean, he's not a droid, of course, but maybe that was Charles. I mean, they don't establish that part, so maybe you guys know this. Let me know in the comment section, and I can look it up myself. But by all means, say something in the comment section. Anyways, and when they did that poster, well, it wasn't big enough, because apparently, when they finished that poster, well, it needed to be more big, like spread out or something. And that's when they inserted Obi-Wan, and they kind of made it look like it was a poster that had been around for so long, and with what they specifically say. Very clever what they did with that, for sure. And if you know this, of course. Yeah. And, because when it came to that, and George would recognize the work of Drew, in fact, George knew about Drew even before Star Wars. He had seen some of Drew's work, being an artist. And some of the later Star Wars posters that he did, like when it came to, say, Return of the Jedi, originally being called Revenge of the Jedi, and the way he did that poster, and I'm sure you know which one exactly it is that I'm going to be talking about, with Darth Vader, and we see it, very, in the distance, Vader and Luke, and apparently I never realized this until watching this documentary. Holy cow, because apparently, well, Drew, in the end, he thought it looked very beautiful and such, but, because the thing is, point being, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, their lightsabers. Vader's lightsaber is blue, while Luke's lightsaber is red. And if you know about this, yeah, again, it never really caught my attention. I never realized that. The many times I've looked at that poster, I never realized. It's just one of those things. Anyways, but I mean, just overall, besides that, no, that poster still turned out to be really good. And even when, say, the title of the movie was changed from Revenge to Return, because keep in mind, Jedi don't get revenge, and how in Star Wars they specifically say it, revenge is not the Jedi way. There you go. Anyways, and Drew, he would then be brought back to do new posters for the original Star Wars trilogy when the special edition was happening in 1997. And, because, of course, as we all know, those three posters with the three Star Wars films and how they're done, just, that's amazing, because, because, and obviously on the VHS covers and so on, because, each of the characters inserted, from A New Hope to Empire and Return of the Jedi, and doing the same thing, having the feel and tone of, say, what was in the Phantom Menace poster still be there for, say, the posters of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So, basically, it's with the A New Hope poster still having that same tone and vibe, that whole thing, for, say, Empire and Jedi in those posters, and just putting them all together, that's amazing. And there are a few times in this documentary at Lucasfilm, the Lucasfilm headquarters in San Francisco, George and Drew, they're walking around the building, and they're actually looking at some other posters that Drew made. And that's the thing, because at times in this documentary, they would kind of show a slideshow of many other posters that Drew did. Especially, he did a lot more for Star Wars. Because, there's one that George points out that just has, say, Jabba the Hutt, Salacious Crumb, and the Cantina Band, and I'm sure you've seen that one. Or one of, say, that where Han Solo is front and center, with his gun like that, and he's holding it up, and, even, say, George and Drew making a comment on how good Chewbacca looks in the poster. That's great to see. I like that, because, we get some time with George and Drew looking at the posters he's made, and that are especially hung on the walls at Lucasfilm headquarters. Nice. Then when it would come to, say, Indiana Jones, yes, Indiana Jones being another biggie, and Indiana Jones as well. Yes, if I already said that before, the Indiana Jones posters are some of my favorites of Drew's. Because when it would come to the Indiana Jones posters, especially, a lot of those complimenting how good Drew Harrison Ford on the posters, really breathing, it's Harrison Ford breathing to life in the poster and all that, nailing down the likeness and all that. Because they talk so much about how amazing Drew is at drawing Harrison Ford and all that. But on account of everything else that's around him, and most prominently with the Indiana Jones posters, and apparently, I think, because I had that feeling too, because, basically, my point being is that, what I'm trying to get out, with them talking most prominently about the poster for Temple of Doom, yes, because even I can't deny, and I'd say probably, again, I hate to choose favorites, but it's there somewhere, the poster for Temple of Doom that Drew did, being a good one, and one of my favorites of the Indiana Jones posters, but, so they definitely talk about that most prominently, but, in the case of the other posters of Indiana Jones that Drew did, in fact, doing a whole series of other posters of Indiana Jones that Drew did for whatever else, came along the way that had something to do with Indiana Jones. Different backgrounds and inserting, say, Indiana Jones or Sala, all that. And, you can really see the detail and skin, you know, all that on the characters. They talk about that. The shading and with, where the eyes are and just everything. Just, Drew being amazing at that. And even say when, he nails the villains and the posters and what's going on in this poster. Because, yeah, like, again, with Temple of Doom, the Temple of Doom poster, because you've got Indy up front and center. He's the big face in the poster. And you've got some romance on this side, count of, Willie Scott, and you've got the evilness on the other side with, the main villain of Temple of Doom, and where he's holding up a, burning, flaming heart, heart that's on fire and all that. Mystery and all that in the poster, just, yeah. And Indy looking at the villain, just, I've got this. Yeah. That's amazing. And to mention more of those that are part of this documentary, of course, because, yeah, well, of course, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, as was already mentioned. And there's also, as I mentioned, Michael J. Fox and Bob Gale, whom appears in this. Harrison Ford is mentioned. And Frank Darabont, whom, yeah, he has a big part of this documentary and a huge admirer of Drew Struzan, especially when Frank himself would have the opportunity to have Drew make a handful of movie posters for a lot of the movie adaptations of Stephen King that he worked on. Most prominently, say, The Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Mist, and even doing some artworks and so on, posters, that is, for The Walking Dead. Yeah, that was him. That was Drew Struzan. I actually didn't quite fully realize that, come to think of it. I'm just saying, because, anyways. So, yeah, but I'll talk more about, I will talk more about Frank momentarily, but just, yeah, coming back to Indiana Jones, and to actually finish up on Indiana Jones, because, yeah, even say when Drew mentions that, he embodies Indiana Jones, like, even, like, having, say, his own cosplay of Indiana Jones, his own getup, the fedora, the jacket, and a whip, and even posing as Indiana Jones, yeah, and actually, because all throughout that time, and the many posters Drew worked on from Indiana Jones, and to whatever other movie it was that starred Harrison Ford, like most prominently Blade Runner, yes, that's another biggie too of Drew's, never once did he and Harrison Ford ever cross paths. But that is until January of 2010. Yes, they did. And yeah, it was amazing to see some great chemistry, great interactions from between, say, Harrison and Drew. And yeah, Harrison, like everyone else, being a huge admirer of Drew's work. Nice, of course. Yeah, how can Harrison not be? That's the thing, just, all right, anyways. Then, what to talk about next? Oh, yes. As was mentioned earlier, the Thing poster. Yeah, because it was like, at one point in the evening time or something, because Drew gets this call, he gets hired to make a poster for the movie The Thing, with Kurt Russell and such. And, I mean, he had no idea of what to specifically do for the poster for The Thing and all that, and not that much description and such, but yeah, he just did it, and he did it overnight, basically. And Frank Darabont, he most probably talks about this, as well as Guillermo del Toro, and yeah, Guillermo del Toro, if I already mentioned him, yeah, him appearing in this documentary, and he too being a huge admirer of Drew's, of course. So, by working on the Thing poster overnight, and basically, because all it is, and as we know, because someone in this winter coat and with light shining, like covering the face, light beams coming out and all that, and yet, when the poster was finished, he gave it to the person who was going to take it and all that, and Drew didn't get 2 days of sleep, but you know what? He made another one hell of a great poster, which being The Thing. Just, yeah, that poster being quite something. Yeah. And it made sense because The Thing, if you think about it, just, and if you've seen the movie itself, which I have, and I've done my review on it. Not to mention, because I think this came after. Yeah, because if you guys know about this, NECA, they actually made a action figure version of what's from the poster, literally, and Drew holding the figure like he's posing with and all that. I have no doubt that he was very impressed that NECA accomplished/achieved making that figure straight from the poster of The Thing, because it's amazing. Just, yeah, nice on you, NECA. You know, just doing whatever you want, you know, and bringing so many great action figures to authentic life, you know what I'm saying? Spitting imagery, you know, all that. Nice. All right, but, okay, now let's talk about this, because, yeah, this, too, being another one of my favorite batch of posters that Drew has done, and I'm pretty sure the same goes for all of us. The Muppets, yes. Because Drew would cross paths with the Muppet people. Most prominently, Jim Henson would be offered to make the poster for the Muppet movie. And, you know, and with Carol Spinney. Carol Spinney's the only one of the Muppet people to be a part of this documentary. And, yeah, I mean, that's great to see. Gotta have somebody from the Muppets appearing in this documentary. And just, yeah, I mean, Carol, because when we cut to him, just a lot of complimenting things he says, and especially according through Carol, like the interactions between, say, Jim and Drew, and how Jim, you know, was really feeling from Drew's art that the Muppets were living and breathing in those posters. It spoke about them and all of that. Not just, say, you know, seeing puppets on sticks and all that, you know what I'm saying? Just, yeah. And, of course, like, because, yeah, the details and ideas that were suggested for the poster for the Muppet movie, because, you know, Gone with the Wind, all that, and with the car, you know, that Fozzie drives in with everybody there, just, yeah, and other variant posters for the Muppet movie that Drew did, and then very later on, the other series of posters that Drew did, you know, being the main poster artist for anything Muppets, up to, say, Muppet Treasure Island. Yeah. Because, yeah, and not to mention that, if any of you have seen this, in another documentary, in this case a documentary series, Prop Culture, one about the Muppets, props from the Muppet movie. Well, Drew appearing in that documentary and showing off the posters he did for the Muppet movies, like having those, you know, in storage, all that, that was great to see. And I'm sure you probably have, any of you have seen that before. Awesome. Yeah, because the series of other posters for Muppet films, you know, from, say, The Great Muppet Caper, and, yeah, I think, yeah, even, I think he did, I think it was, did he do Muppets Take Manhattan? I think so, but yeah. But, most prominently when he did, say, Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island. Yeah, they were some other good ones, too. So, that was really fun, because, you know, in this documentary, when it came to, say, talking about the posters he did for the Muppets, just, yeah, that was awesome. And yeah, because again, like, the chemistry and a friendship that would grow between, say, Jim and Drew being a huge admirer of Jim. What a kind, sweet human being Jim was, and that's very true. We all should know that. Yeah. And Jim Henson just being, you know, bringing magic to life, all that, just, yeah. Anyways. And other posters that would be brought up and such, like, well, because, you know, and, here, let me see, because, like, oh, yeah, because, as I said, you know, about creating the theme poster, because, yeah, because, and I forgot to mention this, he created it just in one day, and he worked overnight. I did mention that part, overnight, you know, and like I said, without any visual references of the film, and, yeah, but still, that poster for John Carpenter's The Thing would become one of Drew's top-notch posters he's done, being right up there with a lot of others. And speaking of which, because, yeah, as was mentioned earlier, the Blade Runner poster, that was another biggie for Drew. And we know which of those posters that Drew did for Blade Runner is the best. Yeah, even, of course, say, Frank Darabont. He knows this, too. And, okay, let's talk about Frank Darabont as of now, because, yeah. So, again, when it would come to, say, Frank teaming up with Drew would do quite a handful of posters for some of the movie adaptations of Stephen King's books that Frank was working on. Again, from, say, The Shawshank Redemption, The Mist, and The Green Mile. Yeah. Especially the Green Mile poster is another good one, too. You know which one that is, of course. With Tom Hanks and Michael Clarke Duncan, all of that. Just, yeah, and green and such. Ugh. Of course there has to be some green in the poster, but yeah. And when it came to The Mist, I think I kind of knew about this. Yeah, because The Mist, and with one of its cast members, and who does appear in the documentary, Thomas Jane. Yes, fantastic actor himself, Thomas Jane. Because his character in The Mist, and I'm sure some of you know this, because his character being a poster artist and apparently in the world of The Mist, he's done quite a handful of movie posters. In fact, they negotiated with Drew. They talked with him, and yeah, kind enough to have some posters of Drew's to be lended to them on a studio. And, for the studio set of The Mist, where Thomas Jane's character is sitting there, he's got all these posters around his apartment, and he's currently drawing one of them. In fact, apparently Drew had to teach Thomas specifically how to draw like he does. Because, well, any artist, they have their own specific ways how they draw. In the case of Drew, and that's another thing, because the way Drew Struzan worked on his posters was kind of not normal, but it worked for him, and it actually, because probably that's something that any artist would probably want to take in consideration. Yeah, because the way he would position the pencil, not like, say, this, like there's the paper and there's the, no, he would have the pencil be like this, because the pointiness, it's working, and, with the specific details that Drew talks about. Like, yeah, anybody who is an expert and knows the specific words when it comes to using a pencil and all that. So he would have it in position like this and all that, and the way, he would do those lines and draw with a pencil, and then other tools he would use, just, yeah. But in the case of Thomas, I mean, he tried his best, and he did. He did for rehearsals and so on. But when it came to shooting, and for the final film, Thomas did the total opposite. But I'm sure it's understandable why he didn't. He eventually, and in the end, he couldn't really do like what Drew does. I mean, come on, because Drew Struzan is Drew Struzan how he draws, okay? Thomas and anybody of anybody else, any of us, we just not all can be able to do that kind of thing like what Drew did specifically. And, well, I mean, it seems like they kind of had a laugh. I mean, it's not like nothing aggressive happened towards one of them that in the end, because Drew, seeing that Thomas did the total opposite, he ignored. I mean, I wouldn't say he intentionally ignored, just, yeah, I mean, for understandable reasons, you know what I mean? But, I mean, because, look, I mean, it's not like, obviously, his character in The Mist being Drew Struzan. Of course not. Just, just, as I said, in the world of The Mist, Thomas Jane's character being that same kind of artist, the way Drew Struzan draws, his character has that, okay? And it's fiction, for crying out loud. So, what does it matter? And this is not and The Mist not being a biopic on Drew, for crying out loud. But anyways, yeah, and just, yeah, and again, because the other films that Drew did on account of Frank Darabont, again, from, say, The Mist to The Green Mile and The Shawshank Redemption, yeah. Some of the best, another top best ones he did. Also, because, yeah, they talk about at times, because, like, yeah, from the 70s to the 90s, Tony and Drew, Tony Senegar, again, I think I'm butchering his last name, but you know who I'm talking about, because they had a good partnership from the 70s to the 90s. In fact, one of the last posters they did was for this, yeah. Which again, the Hook poster being another iconic poster, and, because on the DVD, Blu-ray covers, or even, say, for the DVD menu of Hook, I remember, because having a DVD copy and seeing Drew's artwork for the DVD menu of Hook and such, that was amazing. Yeah, and, like, that's the thing, because I mean, the documentary doesn't talk about it, but I am, because there were, as I seem to recall, and Hook being one of them, yeah, because obviously there were some movies where I think even like some of the movies that would come out, say, on Blu-ray, they did have, for the menu, they would have some of the poster artwork in there. So, obviously in the case for Drew Struzan, yes. Not all of them, but some of them, yeah. By the way, because I was thinking of this, and yeah, because another biggie that Drew Struzan would do is Big Trouble in Little China. Yes, that was another biggie for Drew Struzan. Apparently, with what he says specifically about the poster for Big Trouble in Little China, well, because he actually, the characters that are in the poster, besides Kurt Russell, his character, everybody else they're not characters in whom we see in the movie. Like the lady that's, down below in the poster is someone that Drew knew from, like, across the street or something and just had her pose, that kind of stuff. So, but, overall, besides that, some stuff that's in the poster that's not in the movie, it didn't stop the fact that the poster for Big Trouble in Little China, gotta slow down, turned out to be another great hell of a poster from Drew Struzan. Facts. Yeah, pure facts. Yeah, but yeah, because, and another thing is that, like I said, the posters, they explain to you, like, what this movie's going to be like, with what's going on in the poster and all that. Most prominently, it's brought up, like, from, say, Thomas Jane and a few others. Masters of the Universe. Yeah, because if you guys know this, I'm sure you do, Drew Struzan did work on the poster and brought it to life. The poster for the very underrated Masters of the Universe. I want to say, yeah, the first live-action adaptation of something He-Man. Yeah, because, He-Man, Masters of the Universe, there you go. So, I mean, Thomas Jane and a few others saying that they don't want to see the movie, but the poster they love and admire. And yeah, because even though Masters of the Universe, which is an entirely different story, I know, because the movie itself, not the best, but the poster of the movie, it's quite something. It's freaking awesome, because, yeah, with the details and Drew breathing to life, or having that poster being breathing to life and such, you know what I'm saying. Yeah, it's amazing. So, to heck with the movie. The poster is awesome. I'm pretty sure, though, that anybody who don't like the movie, maybe the same goes for some of you, admire and have a copy of that poster hanging up in your room. Anybody would, but anyways. Yeah, and there are some other movies that that are brought up, and come to think of it, because there are some that I never really knew about. I'm just saying, like, yeah, obviously that would go for any of us. Yeah, because other people that are a part of this documentary, and, because their love and appreciation for Drew Struzan and those who are also filmmakers, yeah. And by the way, because I didn't mention him, Leonard Maltin, famous film critic Leonard Maltin, because his love and appreciation for Drew Struzan's posters, and yeah, because with what he specifically says about the posters, because yeah, that's Leonard Maltin for you. To name some of the other people that are part of this, because yeah, there's Steve Guttenberg from Police Academy and also Short Circuit, Greg Hildebrandt, yeah, because him having a big part of this documentary too, Harry J. Knowles, if I said that right, Ken W. Kelly, Roger Castell, Jason Palmer, Howard Rothman, and also because, and Sam Witwer being a huge admirer of Drew's work, and when he pops up in the documentary sometimes with what he says about Drew's posters, like, most prominently, he's one of those that talks about the poster for Temple of Doom and such. Just nice. Anyways, and that's another thing, because the posters, like, some of them say in this documentary, it's like, you want to step in that world. You want to live in that world of those posters, and that's another biggie, too. Just, yeah. And just the facial expressions, all of that. that come from the many posters that Drew did. Just, it's amazing. And by the way, because, yeah, as I mentioned, Steve Guttenberg, because, yeah, Police Academy, that was another biggie for Drew Struzan. I think it was the second one, yeah. The second, film poster, the poster for the second Police Academy film being the best one, just, yeah. So yeah, nice to see that Steve Guttenberg makes an appearance in this, and he obviously, it was for humor. He mentions that if there's ever going to be if there was, and you know, at that time, like saying if another Police Academy would happen, then you know he asks Drew to come out of retirement and to make that poster, because yeah, I can see Steve's point, because it just wouldn't feel the same if a poster for a new Police Academy film would not be done by Drew Struzan in that style, you know, artwork and such. Yeah. Anyways. Oh, and by the way, let's now talk about, say, Back to the Future, because yeah. Now, when it came to Back to the Future, because yeah, and from Michael J. Fox and Bob Gale, they're the only two that appear in this documentary straight from Back to the Future, and with what they say about Drew Struzan and bringing to life the Back to the Future posters from, you know, from 1 to 3, the entire trilogy, of course. And the fact that, you know, Back to the Future, as we all know, being a time travel movie, but at the same time, it's a comedy. So how is Drew going to achieve that? Well, he did. With what he specifically brought to that iconic poster of the first Back to the Future film, Marty stepping out of the DeLorean, looking at his watch, you know, pulling up his shades, just, that became so iconic. And when doing it again for the next two, when it came to, say, part 2, well, because, you know, it's part 2, then there should be another person right next to Marty, and in the case, Doc Brown, doing that same pose. And yeah, then when it came to, say, part 3, at first it was just Marty and Doc, but because it's part 3, there should be 3 people in there, one more person in that poster, and that, of course, would be Claire, yes. Claire, whom would then be later inserted, Mary Steenburgen being inserted in that poster. You know, not to mention that when it came to, say, the poster for part 2, at first, Michael and Christopher, they actually posed as reference. Nice to see. And obviously they did the same for part 3, and then when they added Claire in there too. Yeah, just overall, because the posters for the Back to the Future trilogy is something else so amazing from Drew's work, just without a doubt. Yeah. And, and also because, yeah, other collaboration partnerships that are talked about in this documentary, just, yeah, some pretty good, but some, maybe not the best. But, yeah, I'll get to that momentarily, but just, yeah. Which, you know, by the way, I might as well talk about it, because, yeah, and to, you know, speed things up some, because, yeah, well, apparently there's a moment in the documentary where, because, yeah, many of Drew's significant amount of his original, let me restart. Drew Struzan, he had a significant amount of his original artwork stolen by a former business partner. And with what those they send, including Drew's wife, with what they talk about this partnership that Drew had, it was something to do with father and son stuff, and apparently one of them just being kind of a jerk. And what was even worse, that yeah, he would take those amount of posters from Drew, then sometime later he would sell them at Christie's. And Drew, he tried to get back those posters, but he had no luck at first. And not to mention, the guy who stole Drew's artwork tried to sue him, but then Drew sued him back. But that guy later on died. He had a heart attack and such. And after he was gone, well, Drew won in the end and acquired all the original artwork of his, rightfully so. Man, that was crazy. And with what they say in the documentary, who'd have thought, right? But yeah, so there's that. But also, because to still speed things up some, because well, the tradition to digital, because yeah, When it came to the early 2000s, well, I mean, Drew, he was still making good progress with whatever other movie poster he was making for any movie that was coming out around that time. Like, well, most prominently, the first 2 Harry Potter films. He did the posters for The Philosopher's Stone, which being titled Sorcerer's Stone in America, and also doing the poster for Chamber of Secrets, and others that he did in the early 2000s, like most prominently, say, Hellboy, because when it would come to Hellboy, and Del Toro, as mentioned earlier, being a huge admirer of Drew Struzan's, and he was nervous at first of collaborating with Drew, but obviously that nervousness obviously went away, and, well, because, yeah, at this point, where the documentary acknowledges the shift in the industry to digital and photographic compositions, and which made Drew Struzan's hand-painted style more unique. Yeah, that. And because, yeah, now it was coming to that point where the industry was starting to have posters be made not by hand, but with like Photoshop and all that, inserting and having the cast members pose or something, just, yeah, all that. And it's unfortunate because Drew Struzan, when he was when he was hired, I should say, hired to do the posters for the 2 Hellboy films of Del Toro's, they were not used for the public, like, not for movie theaters or anything, not even for the DVD covers, all of that. But they technically were still used for, say, limited edition stuff. And Del Toro had to fight with the studio for Drew's work to be used in some way. Yeah. But, I mean, look, no hard feelings on the posters that came to be for the 2 Hellboy films. No, they were good, but, you know, just something about Drew Struzan, his work, that, you know, it should have still been used full time. Besides those, like, come on, just, you know, there's no harm done in that. Even say the same thing would happen when Drew was once again hired to do the poster for Pan's Labyrinth. And that was another beautiful artwork poster that Drew did. And the same thing happened just like with the 2 Hellboy films. Well, not to mention that, as we all know, Pan's Labyrinth was in between the 2 Hellboy films. After Pan's Labyrinth, then came Hellboy the Golden Army. So, yeah. So, all 3 films that Del Toro did, where Drew Struzan was hired, did not go so well. Drew's posters for those 3 films of Del Toro's not being used that much. Again, only for, say, limited edition stuff. Ugh, that's ridiculous and sad, you know, because, you know, I mean, the artwork that Drew does and that he did, and just, like, at that point where it was just his artwork and all that, like, being tossed aside, just people in the industry at that point just, like, having no appreciation for someone like Drew Struzan making posters be brought to life, breathing and living. You get what I'm saying? Just, like, that sucks, you know? But, you know, besides that, Drew would still, you know, make some good accomplishments even afterwards. Yeah, because, other things I'm looking at right now, because, yeah, dedication to his craft, you know. Despite his fame, Drew was known for his relentless work ethic, creating stunning art and breakneck speed, and often feeling that his best work was still ahead of him. Yeah, because, you know, other pieces of artwork that he did that were not movie posters, they were some pretty good ones, and when he shows them in a garage, yeah. And also right here, unused commissions, because, yeah, where the film also presents some of Struzan's work that was not used by Mark, yeah, as I said, on account of a couple of Del Toro's films. But, yeah. But, you know, that's not to say that things went downhill for Drew, because, you know, even when, say, he eventually would technically retire, especially on account of doing movie posters, yeah, I mean, his life going pretty good and such. Especially because it's mentioned, almost towards the end of the documentary, because, you know, his family still going strong. Even, say, when his son, who now was in the business and all that, actually hired his own old man to do a poster and such, yeah. Not to mention that Drew and his wife Dylan, they became grandparents, and their daughter-in-law, whom, does appear in this documentary. Nice to see. And just seeing some very cute, sweet footage of Drew spending some fun time with his grandson, all that, that's amazing. But, because, I think I will, but, I think so, I might put a text or something, because, with what I was saying, because, where Drew did make a poster on account of, being hired by his son and all that, but just in case, right here. Anyways. Also, I did forget to mention this, and I'm gonna be wrapping up things momentarily, but, Goonies. Goonies was another biggie of Drew's, and, because, just the way he did that poster, each of the kids holding on to each other's ankles / their legs, and, even Drew and his wife, humorously saying that, that there were some kids or something making that same position like in the poster. And, I wonder why this wasn't brought up in the documentary, because I'm sure, as we all know, the poster for Goonies, where they're holding on to one another by the legs / ankles, well, there were different versions of that poster where the kids were in different positions. But the main one, of course, being where it's Josh Brolin up in center, being the main one up top, and every rest of the kid you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay, but, anything else to mention about... Well, I think by this point I've said all I could say, and doing my best, but and it is mentioned, if Drew has really retired or anything like that at the time of this documentary when it came out. Well, I mean, because, I think, because it was around, say, the late 2000s when he officially retired from doing posters for movies, but that is until, say, 2 years after this documentary came out. He would come back, just for once, for a very special occasion, to do a very special poster for the new Star Wars film, which being The Force Awakens. I remember seeing that, and I remember when they unveiled that at D23, and I'm sure you guys did too, if any of you remember that and experienced it. Yeah, because... Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, they came out, as well as J.J. Abrams, and they showed to the audience a surprise, a poster that Drew Struzan did. You had Rey, you had Finn, and Han Solo in there, and J.J. Abrams pointing out that, there's one person missing from the poster, and everybody cheering, and, they were losing their minds. You want to see him? Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison Ford! J.J. Abrams announcing Harrison Ford stepping out into the stage. That was amazing. And maybe some of you, feel free to let me know, because I'm sure you might have a copy of that poster. Yeah, because, it was nice that, and just for The Force Awakens, that Drew Struzan came out of retirement to make that movie poster, that special poster for The Force Awakens. Rightfully so. Now, it would have been nice, but, oh well, because... he didn't do any other posters after that, doing the rest of the sequel trilogy. But, that's how it was. But, I think that pretty much rounds things off, and with all I've got to say, really. But, just the documentary itself, Drew, the man behind the poster. This documentary is definitely a fantastic documentary for what it is. The life and knowing so much more about the man behind the posters. And for a lot of us, we're familiar with his work, but we didn't know his name at the time. But I think, even by this point, we all do. Again, everything about this documentary from beginning to end. All about Drew Struzan, those that were a part of this documentary, from Harrison Ford, Michael J. Fox, Guillermo del Toro, Bob Gale, Joanna Cassidy, almost forgot to mention her, because, from Blade Runner, she appeared in this documentary briefly, Steve Guttenberg, Thomas Jane, Frank Darabont, and, Drew's family members, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Leonard Maltin, everybody else, and Carol Spinney as well. Sam Witwer, those that worked with Drew, personally, like, again, from the late Charles White III, and and those that helped Drew get to where he would be, from, say, Ernie to Tony, and knowing all about the fun facts on the posters that he had done from Star Wars, Indiana Jones, The Muppets, The Thing, Police Academy, Big Trouble in Little China, Goonies, Hellboy, Spielberg's Hook, Pan's Labyrinth, a little bit of Harry Potter, and the position of the characters, the posters that are brought to life, living, breathing, and all of that. There's something about the posters that speaks about the movie. You want to step into that poster, that world, and all that. Everything that Drew brought to those posters. And the funny and emotional moments that happen through this documentary, moments and stuff that we did not know about Drew, but until now. And just what more do I really have to say? Overall, the documentary all about Drew Struzan, Drew, the man behind the poster. An excellent, well-put documentary, all about Drew himself. And I'm giving the documentary all about Drew Struzan, Drew, the man behind the poster, well, why not? 10 out of 10 stars. Yes, 10 out of 10 stars for Drew, the man behind the poster. And what about you guys? What did you think of the documentary itself? Drew, the man behind the poster. When were you first introduced to Drew Struzan? And which were some of the first movie posters that he did that you ever saw with your very own eyes? Which are some of your favorites of Drew's? And when you started to learn about the man behind the posters, and even say if it came to this documentary, or if you knew about Drew before the documentary existed, did any of you get to meet Drew in person, maybe at some conventions? And that's another thing, because Comic-Con would be one of the last things that's brought up at the end of this documentary. And it was really great to see Drew appearing at Comic-Con. So many people that admire and love his craft. It's amazing. So that was another good part of that documentary, and being one of the last things to end off this documentary. Yep. And if you've been to Comic-Con, you've met Drew. Maybe some of you did, maybe not all of you. Same goes for me, unfortunately. And if you have any memory of seeing any of Drew's posters, like, rather if it be, say, from DVDs, going to movie theaters, and again, if you have any favorite posters of his, and if you had owned any DVD that the menu contained his artwork in there, and what were some of your favorite parts of the documentary? Some stuff you didn't know about Drew until now. And just overall, what do you think of this documentary itself? All about Drew Struzan, the legendary poster artist himself. And with what all I've had to say, my review, and what did you think of my review? Leave comments and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of the documentary of Drew Struzan himself, Drew, the man behind the poster. More review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. Take care. Rest in peace. The man himself, Drew Struzan, and peace out.